Well, I realized after I went in to do some editing that I wasn't recording anything. I was pushing the button on the front of the camera instead of the top and just changing the settings instead of turning the record on and off. So I pulled the AC compressor out of the way and took the brackets off the engine, which wasn't installed correctly. It was only held on with 2 bolts. And took the other 2 pulleys off the front here and put some bolts in there, and the engine is definitely stuck. I put a bar in between there and I cannot turn the engine, and you can see where the belt, this thing hadn't been turned in, I think, the whole 43 years it was parked. That belt is stuck in the alternator pulley, it was stuck in the crank pulley, the water pump pulley. So I'm going to pull a starter and see if I can get in there with something on the ring gear and budge the engine. And if I can't, there's no point in beating a dead horse, so I think I'm just going to tear the engine down and go through it. I might pull the heads with it in the car just to take a look at the cylinders before I pull it out, but I think at the end of the day I'm just going to have to pull the engine and completely go through it. So I think I'm going to start on that today. I may or may not. A lot of people actually think I should leave the AC on the car, and I might put my vacuum pump on it if it holds a vacuum. I might leave it on, but I don't know. I'm not big on these aftermarket AC units in these cars. I know it's period correct for the car, but it's a convertible. Who needs AC in a convertible, especially in Michigan? So I also noticed I missed the part on the spare tire. That's like the white wall this car should have on it. This is a power cushion tire. It's mounted black wall. You can see it's got really good tread on it. I think we'll just leave this in the car, although if I put radials on it I might put a radial spare in it. But it's a 775/15 Goodyear, and it says tubeless. And it's a power cushion. It says safety premium traction, and it's actually not in bad shape. It's in pretty good shape for an old tire. It's just laying in here because I'm gonna be cleaning out in there. I guess why if I have to go through the engine, if I have to have machine work done on it and stuff, while that's being done, I can work on the body and whatnot. So I can keep moving. And another thing too, spell check keeps changing that IE to Y. And so Tyler, thank you for pointing that out to me, that it did that. And it's IE now, and I'll try and take note every time it changes it to Y from IE and change it back. But what a pain. And put some windows down, just let the interior air out, some of the convertible top hanging down there. And I actually untaped it all, and it's just the tops peeled free from the frame. And I unlatched the top, but I don't have a battery to run it down, so it's going to stay up for now. I want to run it down so I can clean the interior, just get the tops off, out of the way so I have light. Alright, so I'm going to start pulling the starter. So I pulled the starter and the torque converter cover there, and no luck on turning it, so I'm going to show you some other things here. It's got a rusted out freeze plug, so the motor's coming out. Just the easiest way to do everything. I can't see what the camera's showing where I am, but take my word for it, there is a freeze plug there that is rusted out and leaking. That side of the radiator has no coolant, so I'm going to try and save the exhaust. I'm going to heat those up with the torch and undo them, the pipes from the manifolds. I might leave the transmission connected to the engine and pull it out as an assembly. We'll see. I got to take the radiator and water pump and stuff off, but I had some guys comment that these frames rust here, and this thing, and from the inside out, and I'm familiar with that on these cars, but that puppy is solid. You can stick your fingers in it. I've beat it with a hammer, both sides. Everything's really good. This car is solid. And that side's even better. Oh, and the steering gear shaft seal's leaking, so the engine's out. I can pull the steering gear and reseal the steering gear. And might as well paint the engine compartment while the engine's out too. What do you say? I don't think that freeze plug up in there is I can't even get that on the camera. But there's a date code. Let me get it this way. On the engine, it says 6D25, I believe. So if somebody deciphers that, awesome. Just thought I'd show a little bit under here. The tie rod ends are all, none of them are loose. Might need ball joints, I don't know, I'll get to that when I do the springs. So we'll tackle that all at the same time. I might do all that while the engine's out, because then I can do the control arm bushings easier without an engine in there. So removing the engine will make a lot of other processes easier. That's the bracket to the air conditioner, and there was one bolt there and one bolt there that held it to the engine. And these were where idler pulleys were. You can see this is the alternator belt. Not too good a shape, and that was the power steering belt. This was just a cable that was laying under the hood. The actual battery cables are there intact and hooked up. I don't know if this shows up or not, but I did give the interior a very quick vacuuming just to get the heavy dirt out. The carpet just cleaned up, everything cleaned up nice, the carpet. So give it a good cleaning, clean the upholstery. I think the interior is going to be fine. I just stuffed that makeshift ignition switch back in the dash. I got to put it in properly. I'm going to put the correct lock cylinder so the original key works in it. That's a replacement. And I don't have the original cylinder. He cut it off. I'll show you what he did to it. Yeah. I don't know why somebody would have done that, but it is what it is. So we're gonna, I ordered a new old stock tumbler, you know, assembly that the key goes in, and I'll take it to a locksmith and have it tumblers changed to match the original keys of the car. The bezels here, the spring, that's all there, but not the original lock cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling things apart on the motor. I think it'll be, I got to get the hoses off, the pipes off, the power steering, water pump, radiator out. I don't know, I might even pull a core support, we'll see, and just drag everything out through the front. But I got to get the hood off, so I got to wait until I have some people here to help me get the hood off. And I'll take the hinges off and clean them up and paint them, and then, like I say, while the engine's out, I can go around and detail this engine compartment. Super nice. And then the engine, I can paint it before I put it back in, and it looks super nice too. I'll clean the transmission all up, paint all underneath the floor pans above the transmission. You know, might as well make it look nice while it's out, right? I don't know if this is the original starter or not, but it really doesn't look like it's ever been replaced. Can't really, there's some numbers if anyone knows starter numbers. It's C7AF11131A and then a big 6. I think that might be the original starter motor. I'll go through it, rebuild it along with the alternator. Alternator, I think, needs new. Well, I don't know, it turns fairly smooth. I think the thing was just hitting this. Yeah, it's just hitting that, the bracket there. But I'll go through the alternator anyway. And another thing too, look what I found. Whenever you work on one of these old cars, get yourself the correct manufacturer's shop manual for the car. Don't get Climbers or Chiltons or Mickey Mouse one, get the real deal and set everything to factory specifications, and I mean everything. Carburetor, ignition, everything, and your car will perform like brand new and will be trouble free. Check that out. Brand new distributor cap. This actually has Autolite spark plug layers on it too. Get the camera to where you can see it. So anyway, I'll probably reuse the cap. It's brand new. Rotor is brand new. The vacuum advance or centrifugal advance is pretty good. Points are a little dirty. The Pertronix electronic ignition for this is quite expensive, so this may retain points and condenser. We'll see if I can find one reasonable. I'll put a Pertronix on it. That's the temperature sending unit. This has a cold and hot light. This actually has a little wick that for the centrifugal advance that lubricates. You put a few drops of oil on it, it keeps it free this from the distributor shaft, and then your centrifugal advance doesn't freeze up. So I put a couple drops of oil on it, and now look at that, how nice and freely that moves. I'll check this to make sure the diaphragm is good. If it's not, we'll replace it. Just go through the whole engine, why the engine's out, and if I have to have machine work done while it's in the shop, I can go through the carburetor. I do have the tag for the carburetor. So, you know, I can look at the valves. If the heads need to be rebuilt, we'll do them. And we'll just, you can see here, this is another thing why when they added the air on, they moved the power steering pump bracket out so the pulley would line up out here, and they really didn't put anything in there. It's just kind of, like I say, Mickey Mouse. So we may we'll see on the air conditioning. I am gonna put my vacuum pump on it before I open it up and see if it holds vacuum. If it does, I'll make the decision later as to whether I remove the AC or not. I probably will remove it and sell it. I'm just not a big fan of these systems, as I've said probably a dozen times. And we'll get the heater core out too and get that cleaned and checked out along with the radiator and the fuel tank. Alright, let me start pulling the carburetor and stuff off the engine. Got the radiator out, and you can see the condenser is garbage. The system had no refrigerant in it, and I went to check it for if it would hold vacuum, and it does not. But these are like loops, so it might be able to be repaired, but it's not worth it. I'm not gonna spend any money on old aftermarket air conditioning, and so all that's coming out. And I'll sell a system on eBay if somebody wants to buy it. I'm doing the fittings. I'm not cutting the lines. I hate that when you see people that cut lines, so I'm just going to unbolt everything. I think I'm going to take the lines off the power steering pump so I can get that out there and clean all the bracketry up in the pump and paint it, and probably replace the fluid lines. And like I say, the steering gear's leaking, so I'll there's a place not too far from me that rebuilds steering gears, and I've bought seals from them in the past for these steering gears, so I can reseal a steering gear. That's no big deal. The fluid coming out is clean, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the gear other than it needs a seal. And you can see this nifty spacer somebody put on there for when they cobbled on the air conditioning. You know, you got to remember these. Back in '66, you didn't have to be certified to work on cars, and you know, these guys that probably put this air in probably didn't even know how to check the oil in a car. So, you know, they're just doing as what they're told and trained to do. So right here, there's and I don't know, maybe it shows up better without the light. There's little staples that hold the valve cover gasket to the valve cover, so I suspect these have never been off. And I got all the bolts out. So I'm going to pop the covers. I think, like I say, the engine has to come out, but I think I'm going to pull the heads just because I think it'd be easier with the engine in the car. I don't know where my engine stand is. I got to hunt it up. I don't know if it's at my brother's or if it's up at my dad's or where it is, but for now I'm just going to pull the heads and go from there. And I don't, you know, there's, look at the inside of the intake runners. No rust. So nothing got down through the carburetor into the cylinders. So, I don't know. It's just probably from condensation why it's got stuck. But maybe I can free it, maybe not. But I think even if I can free it, I think I'm going to pull all the pistons and hone the cylinders if they're not needing to be rebored and re-ring it, re-bearing it, whatever. We'll go through it. If it needs machining, we'll do the machining. But just plugging away at it, the distributor is loose and it moves up a little bit, but it's sticky. So it's got like sludge or something on it, and I just been spraying it and slowly working at it and get that out, and I'll get the valve covers off in the meantime, and then I can get the intake and the whatnot off. So if all you numbers guys out there know what these numbers mean, leave a comment in the comments below. I just don't have time to go through and look up all the information on this, but you saw the number by the oil filter on the engine block. That's on the intake, and when I find some on the heads, there is some numbers, but they're between the manifold and they're right down in here. So when I get the heads off, I'll get some of those numbers. And those are the numbers on the distributor. There's some more casting numbers for any of you that know date codes or whatever. And there's some down there too. I don't know if they'll show up or not, but it looks like it says 06 AER. Let's go over and see what the other head has on it. This one has, I'll turn the camera the way so you can see it. Looks like a 6D26 maybe. And then down there, looks like a C6AER. Yeah, and it looks like it could have used a little more frequent oil changes. A little bit of sludge in there. So I pulled the rocker arm shafts and push rods to get the intake off, and I noticed this pretty badly worn area on the push rod, and the push rod's not bent. I mean, that's worn in quite a bit, and that whole width about the same distance. Now these push rods spin when the engine's running and go up and down, so I suspect that was rubbing on something. So I took a look. It's the exhaust valve on number 3, and whether it shows up in the video or not, but there is flashing on the cylinder head that this was rubbing on. So that's a manufacturer's defect. This was from when the car was built back in 1966. So I wonder it didn't cause any engine major issues with the, you know, break or bend or make noise or something. So interesting. So we'll grind that flashing away so the push rod clears it. Doesn't appear any of the valves are stuck. That one might be stuck. That one's stuck. That one's stuck. Two stuck valves on that side. So that's to be expected. Probably work them a little bit and they'll be fine, but the heads I'll probably have them rebuilt and hardened valve seats put in. Well, one thing flabbergasting is I just put my impact on the exhaust studs and they come undone. I didn't have to eat them. I thought I was going to usually have to eat those things until they're cherry red. All was in the sump was black nasty oil, no water or anything. So I think this car, the recommended oil change intervals on the car were every 6,000 miles or 6 months. And it looks like that's probably what the owners did. It looks like it had oil changes, but not often enough. Like they should have done it twice as often, you know, for this era car. So I'll get the oil out and then I think tomorrow I'll pull the heads and maybe pull the engine and pull the rest of the engine. The exhaust is, what's left of the exhaust is just hanging there. I want to be able to bolt it back up so it's not running straight out of the manifolds when I crank it up. That's one thing I don't like doing that I'll pay somebody to do is exhaust. I absolutely despise doing exhaust work, so it's going to run straight pipes until I can get it to a muffler shop. So the car will be, that tires and exhaust will probably be the last thing done on it. And when I restore cars, I like to do the mechanical work first. So you know, that way if you bugger up scratch your fender or mess it up, it doesn't really matter because you're going to repaint it anyway. So I like to get the car mechanically sound and then do the cosmetic work. So I'm gonna detail the engine compartment though. I think I said that when the engine's out, and do everything it needs. Reseal the steering gear. If it needs control arm bushings, they'll get installed. New springs. Give it a good going over, you know, under the hood here. So when I drop the motor back and everything under the hood will look like brand new, and then I can just refinish the body, and I don't think I'm going to really have to do anything with the interior other than just clean it up. Oh, and that's coming out because the condenser is bad and I'm not putting money into that old AC unit. You know, I'll probably list it on eBay. People buy them, they want the old stuff under the dash. So I was just sizing things up under here to pull the motor, and I'm looking at the bolts that hold the, sorry, I don't feel like getting the light, but that's the nut right there that holds the transmission torque converter to the flywheel, and I can't turn the motor to get those nuts undone. And I don't want to take a chance in damaging the transmission trying to pull a motor with the torque converter attached. So I'm going to drain the fluid out of the transmission tomorrow and pull a transmission with the engine. And then I'll unbolt the transmission and take it off, and then try and get around to get the nuts off to get the torque converter and then the flywheel off. If not, I'll just try and take the engine apart with the transmission attached, so I don't want to damage that or destroy it or take a chance on wrecking the transmission. And so I'm going to just have to be really careful. So hopefully we can, you know, I might be able to undo the rods of the stuck pistons, and we'll get the heads off tomorrow and have a gander at the cylinders and see what we need to do to get the engine to turn to where I can get that torque converter undone from the flywheel before I pull the transmission. So I'm calling it a day. I'm pretty worn out. It's been worked on it, I don't know, let's see, about 6 hours today. And I'm just going to call it a day. So again, if you like my videos, hit the like button. If you enjoy my channel and want to see this car resurrected, subscribe. And thank you for watching my video.